right, guys, what's going on? Welcome in. In this one, I'm joined by my buddy Ace Boogie. Ace, what's up, dude? How's it going?
I'm great, bro. How you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. And look, as we all know, Bengals at Jets, MetLife Stadium, 1 o'clock. But honestly, man, like I'm a little shocked that the Bengals are 0-2. Can you talk a little bit about kind of what went wrong so far in the first 2 weeks?
Yeah, man, I'm shocked as well. I mean, starting off against Mitch Trubisky, Cooper Rush, 0-2, crazy. But I would say it's a multitude of things. There are some things that have kind of reared their ugly heads that we saw a lot last year, even with the success of last year. And I would say that that would be play calling and situational awareness from Zach Taylor, not adjusting to the cover two. That's been really the Achilles heel. Is the play calling and setting players up for success. And then the biggest one has been the offensive line, right? The offensive line was an issue because they went out, they spent all of this money on the offensive line. However, a lot of the guys didn't practice together through training camp in the preseason. Like, it was a mess. I mean, I believe Kappa was out initially early. He was out, and then I believe Ted Karras has probably been the only guy that's been there. Originally, they wanted to start with Jackson Carman at the left guard position. After they saw him in the first preseason game, they were like, you know what? You're not the guy. So they pivoted to the rookie, Cordell Volson, who's been kind of up and down. First game was really bad for him. Second game, he really bounced back well. Jonah Williams is still there. Lyle Collins was literally out the longest out of all of them. I don't think he ended up coming back until maybe like a week or two before preseason started. So these guys didn't really practice much with each other, and then they didn't play in the preseason together. I thought that it wasn't going to be a huge issue just because, these are veteran guys. They're supposed to be better than the guys that we had last year. So I assumed that they were going to be better. But the funny thing is, I actually talked to a Bengals player that actually went to the camp, a former Bengals player that went to the camp that, was familiar with the offensive line, let's just say that. And he was warning me about a month or two ago, and he was just like, look, the technique that these guys are being taught by the offensive line coach, the way that they're trying to block, he was like, this isn't good. This is going to be dangerous. And for me, like, sometimes he kids with me. So I just thought that he was kind of trolling me a little bit. But you can see it out there on the field. It's like, the coaching has to improve. Putting Joe Burrow, I feel like now is in a position to where he's battling a bad offensive line and a new look cover two and trying to figure those things out. And he's not really getting much help from this coaching staff in doing so. I mean, so honestly, I think he's at a point now after being sacked 115 times that he's kind of second guessing the protection, right? Like, he's going to his first read, and instead of going to his second read and seeing the guy open, he's putting his head back down, wondering if he's going to get hit. That has led to a lot of the issues. And then the offense in general, I kind of alluded to it earlier. Zach Taylor with these slow starts, like, this isn't anything new for the Bengals. This was happening last year. The only difference was they were actually taking deep shots. So they'd start off with these slow first quarters, and then pretty much by the end of the second quarter, they just have a random like 60 or 70-yard bomb to Jamar Chase. And they've always been, for the most part, a second half team. And so these are similar things that we saw, but it's just even worse now because of the offensive line issues. And now it's appearing that Joe Burrow is finally starting to get the yips and be worried about the protection.
Yeah, dude, it's interesting, man. I feel like if you look back at the past couple of seasons, it's interesting that you brought up the player and everything like that, and it could be a problem with the coaching. Because, like, I remember Jonah Williams, man, like, I thought he was going to be a stud for you guys, but it's just, and granted, he did get hurt and everything like that early on in his career, but, it kind of makes you question everything that's in place. Like, I feel like no matter who you are, if you're a Bengals offensive lineman, it's always below average. And I mean, is there one offensive lineman that you actually feel like good about moving forward?
Honestly, maybe Ted Karras. Like, he hasn't been too bad. I don't like to go off of the PFF stuff because when you give up 13 sacks, right? I'm like, nobody on this line is playing good. Like, they have to play together. There's that cohesion. But I do think that Ted Karras is a guy that I have some faith going forward in. Lyle, I had faith in him. He had a back injury. Now he just missed practice yesterday with the back injury. So I'm not sure if it's, the back injury that's affecting his play or where that is. I would probably say maybe Volson. Like, I'm not as high on Volson as some of our other fans are because there was quite a variance from his first game to his second game. Obviously, he's still a rookie figuring it out, but maybe you have some faith there. Those would probably be the two guys as of now. Jonah, I think, can bounce back. Me personally, I'm with you. I like Jonah. I thought that he was a good pick. I felt like at sometimes, though, he always kind of struggled with like no one's not going to struggle with Myles Garrett, right? But Myles Garrett has had some monster games against him. And I remember bringing some of those to fruition, or not to fruition, but to the light earlier. And a lot of people were like, oh, you're just hating on Jonah. And I'm like, no, it's like, when this guy goes against certain guys, he can be beat. And so I think Jonah bounces back. The issue, I think, is not even on the players. It's got to be Frank Pollock and the coaching. I mean, Frank Pollock was with you guys. I'm not sure, was there a reason why you guys moved on from him? How was Frank Pollock when he was in New York?
Well, I mean, the Jets have, historically, I mean, when I was a kid, the offensive line was okay, with guys like Nick Mangold and DeBergashaw Ferguson. We had like solid anchors on the O line, but really, man, since those guys are retired, the Jets just have not been able to have success with veteran players, with younger players. Of course, it's not like every single offensive lineman for the past, 6, 7 years has just been horrible.
Right.
I mean, and there's still some bright spots. The Jets brought in Laken Tomlinson at guard. I'm a big fan of George Fant, but he's had a rocky start to the season this year. Granted, though, and the Jets and the Bengals are, in kind of the same, in kind of the same boat here. They both went up against two solid defenses. In the Jets, it's Baltimore and Cleveland. Edge rushers galore, and then for you guys, it was Dallas and Pittsburgh. So, it is a small sample size, but it does kind of make you scratch your head, like, man, if these two teams could just figure out the offensive lines, keep the quarterbacks upright. I believe both teams can win a lot of games this upcoming season.
For sure.
But man, when you look at Cincinnati, you talked about the offensive line, you talked about the coaching and the play calling. That's really interesting to me because this team was in the Super Bowl last season.
Right.
You don't go and beat Kansas City. You don't go and have playoff success if one unit of the team is struggling or you have like a major Achilles heel. It
Right.
really felt like all things were clicking for for the squad a year ago. Projecting forward, is that kind of the expectations, like to win the AFC again, to win the AFC North, and just to have that playoff success?
Oh, for sure. I mean, I think Joe set the standard when we beat, I believe it was the Las Vegas Raiders in the first round, right? And everybody's like, oh, first playoff win in 30 years. Like, he didn't even celebrate it. And that's one of the things about Joe that I like that he exemplifies as a leader is that he does these little things that really inspire the team. So it might be as little as not celebrating, a playoff win in 30 years because he was like, no, this is the standard now. The standard is that we get to the playoffs and we can go out there and try to beat anybody. And so, of course, I feel like that's what the standard is now is trying to win the AFC again, get back to the Super Bowl, especially after you got there and you felt like you should have won it. I mean, there were points in that game where we felt like we should have won it. And, you look at that last play and it's like, man, you come out a play short. And if you would have had the offensive line better last year, who knows? You're probably hoisting the Lombardi. And I think that this team felt like that in the offseason. So that's why they went out and spent so much on the offensive line. But when you have Joe Burrow, when you have Jamar Chase, when you have T. Higgins, you have this window of all of these young players and young talent, you feel like you should be able to go out and do it again. So I do think that that is what the end goal is for this team looking forward.
Yeah, dude, I hear you. I remember back last season when the Bengals beat Vegas, man. It was cool. I was pulling for him, and I remember how Burrow kind of responded, and everything that you were talking about. It was super cool. Because I felt like there was a moment where it was like, hey, we did it, we got over the hurdle, and that's it. Now maybe not necessarily take the week off, but you'll have that hangover the following week, and just get killed in the playoffs and end up going home. But man, what can the Jets do to have success against Cincy this upcoming Sunday?
Oh, for sure. I would say that it would be getting to Joe Burrow. I mean, that's the best thing to do. Also, like stretching out leads. Like that's one of the things that the Bengals have really struggled with. They've played from behind. I think they're the only team in the NFL that has trailed in both games. I think that that's how you kind of take advantage of them. Offensive line, get up on them early. Defensively, I would probably say Noah Brown had a solid game, which makes me worried about Garrett Wilson here. Maybe it is that you look at Eli Apple. Cheeto, I think, is a very solid corner. I don't see Cheeto giving up much, but there have been some mishaps in that secondary where every now and then you can kind of catch them slipping, and teams have done that. I think from a running game stand plan, we're pretty good against the run. Like we've done pretty well against it. However, there are little creeks and crevices, as you guys saw last year, because you guys were one of the only teams that really ran for 100 yards, other than I believe Cleveland and Nick Chubb against us. Those were things that I think you guys were able to exploit. So that's a possibility with you guys, just seeing what you did last year. And outside of that, I would probably say limiting Jamar Chase as much as possible. Obviously, he's kind of the lifeline of this offense. They don't treat him like it sometimes. They've done a better job of that, especially in the first game. But Jamar Chase, I think if you have your corners on him, whether that's Sauce, whether that's the other gentleman, his name escapes me, but he's playing at an elite level right now. Your other
Reed.
corner on the other side, yeah, Reed, DJ Reed. If you guys shut him down, then that makes the Bengals pretty much one-dimensional. And like I said, if you stretch the lead, it takes the run game out of it. You could run the cover too. I think that you guys have great corners, so I wouldn't foresee you having to run that, but that does eliminate some of the deep opportunities that we've been taking advantage of in the past. So it'll be interesting to see if you guys run the cover two and how they respond to it this week, because this coaching staff just hasn't had an answer for it the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, dude. So this is kind of like a selfish question because the Jets have had tons of problems at the safety position. They brought in Whitehead from Tampa Bay, and Super Bowl champion. Like everybody was pretty high on that signing. It was a multi-year deal.
Yeah.
But dude, what's going on with Jesse Bates, man? If he hits the market, I feel like the entire Jets fan base would love to have him in New York. But I don't know. I think the headlines are a little weird. Like, is he going to stay there? Long-term contract? What do you hear? What do you kind of make of the situation?
Yeah, for me, I think it's a situation where the Bengals, they've got all of this nucleus of young talent, right? And you have to pay it. And the thing that really changed this, I think, for me, was what we saw in the offseason. You talk about the wide receiver market exploding, right? You've got T. Higgins coming up on a contract that you got to pay. Then Deshaun Watson happens, right? And that affects not only Lamar Jackson, but Joe Burrow as well, right? Because now you have to pay at least 250, possibly 300 million guaranteed for Joe Burrow, which they would immediately want to get that started by the end of this season, because that's when they can finally do it. So Jesse's kind of in a situation where the Bengals are in a situation with Jesse where it's like, we'd love to have you, we'd love to pay you, but hey, we're going to have to pay, Joe Burrow this exorbitant amount of money. We're going to have to pay T. Higgins this exorbitant amount of money. So it's tough for us to really, keep you around. And I think what it's really transpired to is Jesse's agent is really big on guaranteed money, right? The Bengals historically, like they haven't been giving out the most guaranteed money because, they're a smaller franchise. They're doing things now like changing the name of the stadium to bring in more money. But historically, they just can't afford to pay, Jesse Bates all that guaranteed money, Joe Burrow all that guaranteed money, and who knows what T. Higgins is going to get in guaranteed money. And so that's where the sticking point has been. And Jesse's agent has pretty much taken it as, okay, well, you guys don't want to pay him like he's a top 5 safety in the league in terms of guaranteed money. And, the Bengals wanted to keep him, but there was only so much that they could do. And so it has essentially got to a space where it's like, okay, we're going to franchise you, which this is what the Bengals essentially do with guys in this situation. They usually franchise them, give them all of that money guaranteed, and let them hit the market and hope that you get a pretty good pick in return, compensatory pick. I think that's where it's headed because they tried to gain some leverage by drafting Dax Hill. And the way that this works is generally because Jesse Bates is up and Von Bell is up. Generally, the way that it works is they'll offer one player a certain deal. If that player rejects it, I wouldn't be surprised if they went to Von Bell and offered him the same exact deal that Jesse didn't take, and that they take him, and then Dax Hill becomes your starting free safety next season. So I definitely think Jesse will be available. But I think it really just came down to Jesse wanted more guarantees, kind of listening to his agent instead of working it out with the Bengals. And so it's not a situation where he's bitter or anything like that, or there's any animosity between Jesse and the team. Jesse actually, this story just came out. He dislocated his finger in the last game and didn't even come out of the game. He just put it back in place and played. So this isn't a guy that's like bitter at the team or anything like that. So I think like from both sides, it's like, all right, we know that this is probably likely the last year. Let's go out, try to win the Super Bowl year last year and get paid. So I think they're expecting Jesse to go and hit the market and get paid. And I think that the Jets fans definitely can expect him to be out there. And I think we've seen it in the last, two off seasons where the Jets have clearly been looking at former Bengals players. You talk about Carl Lawson, you talk about CJ Uzama. It wouldn't shock me if you guys were able to land a guy like Jesse Bates.
Yeah, man, dude, that's crazy because Bates is one of my favorite players, but admittedly, so is Dax Hill. I loved him back at Michigan. I love that draft pick. But hey, man, I don't want to take up too much of your time. I appreciate you coming on.
Yep. Yeah, no problem, man. Appreciate it.
And then all of Ace's links are down below in the description box, YouTube, Twitter, and of course, Instagram as well. But yeah, thanks so much for watching. I appreciate it. And as always, go Jets.